Day 801 of the largest European war since World War II, also known as Russia's 3-Day War. Juzzie here, and today is a super quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 474,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 860 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 9 tanks, 18 APVs, and 21 artillery. So we'll head across to the map, starting out. So a Russian aviation strike that was intended for across the border in Ukraine into the Kharkiv direction led to another disaster inside of Russia when an air-launched glide kit failed in its operation and erroneously landed near to a built-up residential location, which is a fairly unsurprising and all too common occurrence in Russia's Belgorod Oblast at the moment. Then, just nearby, as in the Russian village of Nechavka, located also in the Belgorod Oblast, an electric substation has burst into flames, with the cause of the blaze suspected to be a local homegrown attack, although the saboteur or actor remains unknown at this time. Then headed across to the main Ukrainian map today, as Ukrainian air defenses shot down 23 out of 24 Shahed drones overnight, with no known instances of medium or long-range missile attacks occurring. Then moving across more specifically into the east today, as starting out, Ukrainian soldiers of the 110th Brigade, who returned to the front just recently, shot down a Russian Su-25 aircraft, close to where the most intense combat on the front lines is at, near to Sheraton. With these Su-25 aircraft typically operate as close air support for Russian offensives. And as for this region, most recent analysis and reports tend to suggest that Russia is expected to suffer a surge in casualties over the next 2 months as they launch renewed offensives in eastern Ukraine, and this would be more or less due to their cannon fodder approach that they take on. But despite the staggering cost in army personnel eliminations, Russia has seemingly doubled down, as it has adapted its military strategy to focus on attritional warfare, prioritizing sheer numbers over quality. Which means this mass-oriented approach will likely persist throughout the war and have lasting implications for the future of Russia's armed forces. So that is to say, severely undertrained and under-equipped. Because, take for example, a recent unexplainable repeated surge in Russian activity in Vuhledar. We haven't heard about this place in a while, as the Russian forces are at it again, constantly attacking Ukrainian positions near the settlement. But the landscape and the Ukrainian fortifications are just not designed for an untrained Russian offensive, as most recently, multiple pieces of Russian heavy equipment have once again been destroyed, including this destroyed T-80 and T-62 Russian tank, also a damaged and abandoned T-72B3, a destroyed BMP-1, 2 MTLBs, and another damaged and abandoned T-72B3 variant. With this recent footage, all very quite different in look to all of those former wintertime offensives you might remember, which in fact looks all very quite different to previous failed Rush offensives by Russian forces from the past, as back then those failed offensives were mostly before the dawn of the Russian cope cages installed on tanks. And do note, all of this now is not to be confused with the older rusted out vehicle hulls from times gone by. Although, as you can see, we do actually still see those pieces of rusty scrap metal still in the field. So there's a couple of Russian brigades still operating in this theatre, holding to their most famous title of the Russian kamikaze brigades, working alongside rotating commanders and very short-term memory of the battlefield dynamics right here, probably because of the rotating commanders. But of course, the location does make sort of sense for Russian forces to make these devastating attempts, due to the region being where north meets west. And so somebody probably very high up in the Russian army ordered to attack and thus filled this gap. Much easier said than done. Then taking a look around on the map, as somewhere in the east, a Russian mechanized assault runs into a lone Ukrainian T-64B tank variant from the 58th Motorized Brigade. The Ukrainian T-64 puts a 125mm shell into the Russian tank, causing the vehicle to suffer a catastrophic ammunition detonation, forcing a Russian retreat. And any T-64 tank interaction from the Ukrainian forces reminds me of this past example, as a Ukrainian T-64 shoots a Russian T-90 point blank, as the Ukrainian tank was just beyond the tree line here. Noting that the T-64, although older than the Russian T-90 tank, has actually undergone some significant upgrades after the turn of the 21st century, with modernizations including upgraded armor, the integration of digital systems for better battlefield management and coordination, as well as improved optics such as the sighting and targeting systems. So the argument could be made, ironically and in some respects, that this T-64 is better than the Russian T-90. It's just what the raw data seems to suggest, although I think we can all agree that the Ukrainian tankers are actually much better trained than their Russian equivalents. Then, also in the east, a Swedish-supplied Archer artillery system in Ukrainian service hits a Russian Mr. S with drone-spotted counter-battery fire, destroying the self-propelled howitzer. Then also, we saw a Ukrainian drone perform its munition drop on a pile of TM62 anti-tank landmines, setting off a massive explosion. So all in all, it was truly a monumental weekend for Russia so far, which directly coincides with Russia's latest bout of attritional-style quantity over quality warfare tactics that they continue to employ. Then, being that it's a shorter video today, we'll head across to some news now, as the United Kingdom has officially lifted all restrictions and limitations on the use of the Storm Shadow missiles, allowing Ukraine to operate them inside Russian territory. UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron emphasised that Ukraine has the right to decide how to employ British weapons, stating that it is understandable for Ukraine to defend itself by striking targets within Russia, just as Russia has been attacking inside Ukraine. Cameron also called upon other Western nations to follow the UK's lead in relinquishing the illogical self-deterrence and granting Ukraine the freedom to utilise the provided weapons as needed. So this decision marks a significant shift in UK's stance on the conflict and may encourage other allies to adopt a similar approach. An approach, no less, that would have been considered unthinkable just even, say, 6 or 9 months ago. And I've said it before, because as Ukraine has developed their own longer-ranged weapons to strike inside Russian territory, it has had the knock-on effect of the spectre of using Western-provided weapons for strategic purposes inside of Russia, and as a result, turn UK announcements like these into a significantly de-escalated concern, as strange as that might sound. Then in some more news, the US Air Force has awarded a $23.5 million contract to Scientific Applications and Research Associates Incorporated for the acquisition and integration of home-in GPS jam seekers into existing Joint Direct Attack munitions, otherwise known as the JDAMs, and their wing kits. This upgrade will enable Ukraine to seek and destroy electronic countermeasures, allowing Ukrainian aircraft to target Russian GPS jammers near the front lines. So by neutralizing these jammers, other GPS-guided munitions like the GIMLARs, the HIMARS, and the 155mm Excalibur shells will be able to hit their targets more effectively. Then in some more hardware news, Hensoldt, a German defense manufacturer, has announced plans to supply Ukraine with 6 additional TRML 4D radars by the end of 2024. The radars are part of an older package exceeding 100 million euros and will bolster Ukraine's air defense capabilities. These advanced radars can detect and track up to 1,500 targets within a 250-kilometer radius, effectively distinguishing various aerial threats, including high-speed and low-flying cruise missiles, aircraft, and helicopters. And this comes at a time where Germany has recently pledged to deliver another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine, bringing the total number of German-supplied Patriots provided to 3. Then in some other news, Russia has placed Ukrainian President Zelensky on a criminal wanted list for unspecified crimes, as reported on May 4th. So Zelensky's entry on the Russian Interior Ministry's list includes his date of birth and a pre-invasion photo, but lacks details about the specific criminal charges. He also joins other international figures targeted by the Kremlin since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, including Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas and members of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, who issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. So, as for this wanted Zelensky figure they speak of, they could have at least given a reason as to why. Shouldn't be that hard to make up something. Then headed across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment. Well, in fact, many of them. More than you can poke a stick at. It's just getting out of control. So for this rapid fire section of a blunder segment, here we go. So first of all, there was a recent video of a motivational speech to Russian forces by their commanding officer, with him flat out stating they wouldn't make it back home, but they will be adorned as heroes forever and ever, etc., etc. Not exactly a morale boost. Then in another blunder, a Russian mother reportedly gets compensated 500 rubles and a postcard for a fallen son. $5 seems pretty insulting if you ask me. Then in another blunder, a Russian forces conscript that's 50 years old eliminated 6 of his own Russian soldiers to escape the front lines. Although the backstory for this one is reportedly such that he's, well, a 50-year-old conscript doesn't normally make sense because he is a Ukrainian from one of the quote-unquote Russian liberated territories of Ukraine. And so this is not the first time something like this has happened. So it boggles the mind how Russia still tries to enlist Ukrainians for its war against Ukraine. It's also quite illegal to occupy an area and then send the locals to fight for your war. Plus, would you really want to? I mean, look at this. So that's it for today, guy. Perhaps one of my shortest videos I've done in quite some time. I thought I just wanted to squeeze in a few quick things instead of doing nothing there today. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment and subscribe if not already. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.